In this episode, we're going to talk about inflation, and not just CPI, but we're going to talk about real inflation. We're going to dig into inflation big time and then stick around to the end because we're going to give you actual things that you can do to help fight inflation. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound with Darren Mitchell. I'm your host, and joining me today is Christina Wyatt, wealth coach at Control and Compound. Christina, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Darren. How are you doing today?
Fantastic.
That's great. Before we get started, I just want to remind our listeners that if you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, you are going to want to leave that 5-star review and subscribe. And then for those watching on YouTube, make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you always know when new content is coming out.
Love it. Okay, so we're going to dig into inflation today. Where are we going to start, Christina? You want to start right at the beginning?
Well, let's start from the top, Darren. What is inflation? What is a definition?
There's all kinds of definitions, and we'll dig into those. But I mean, inflation just goods and services cost more, right? Go fill up your tank, go to the grocery store, try to buy something. You know what inflation is. It costs you more now than it cost you last month or last year. And we're seeing big spikes in inflation, and where's it going to end, and what's real inflation? We'll dig into all that today, but it's just cost of goods and services going up.
Yeah, pretty simply put, right? And we do actually have another podcast that we did not that long ago. We'll put a link up to go check it out. But we dig into inflation and some real world examples on how inflation happens, and feel free to check that one out. But from the next question, you're saying inflation's a hot topic here. We're seeing interest rates rise in Canada to fight inflation. So it's a very popular topic. How did we get here? Why do we have these high inflation rates at this point? Yeah, it's really a perfect storm, right? I mean, we've got massive government spending. Right now, we had a pandemic and all that. I get that, but forget about that. I mean, it's just monetary policy. If you massively increase government spending, you're going to have inflation. And then we had demand pull. And demand pull is all of a sudden COVID happened and everyone's home. And all of a sudden they don't have anywhere to go spend their money, like traveling and do all this. And they're living at home. And all of a sudden government money's flowing in. They're still getting paid. People are not spending money. They have more money than they had. So what do? They go renovate their houses. They go build decks. They go put additions on their homes. We saw what the price of lumber is. Then they go do they want to buy cars. They want to do this. Well, that was driving up demand. So we had an increase in demand. But then we also had that supply chain stuff. That's really cost push in economics terms, a cost push, which cost push means, if you look at manufacturing, almost 100% of manufactured goods go through China at some point. So at least some part of that goes through China. You look at semiconductors, 92% of semiconductors made in Taiwan. What happened? Those countries locked down, shut down. Businesses were shut down. Small businesses were shut down. But when those supplies couldn't come, well, that affected everything. And then when they did come, it was a lot more expensive. Shipping costs tripled. So we had cost spiral, and we had demand spiral, and then we had this massive influx of government spending. So it's really a perfect storm on why we have inflation, and it's not a surprise. A lot of economists were calling this a year or two ago. There's a lag when you spend government money. It might take 12, 24 months before. Now, I'm not saying the war in Ukraine didn't have an effect, but that much government spending, there's going to be big inflation, and then there's some other factors that contributed to it as well. Yeah, kind of made it the perfect storm in the inflation. We should have known it was coming at the end of the day, right? We saw the government spending. We knew it was on its way. Didn't really have a plan in place for it at the end of it. Like what we're seeing now is those interest rates trying to fight it, bring it down. But they should have been well aware that this was going to happen when they increased that spending. But when we look at all the other factors, in the economy, the unemployment rates, those types of things, we're not actually seeing that happen yet. So I know there's inflation and then there's stagflation. Do you think that we're hitting a stagflation point now, Darren, or are we still in that inflation stage? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're still in an inflation stage, but stagflation is a big concern, right? We've got the highest inflation in 40 years in North America. We've got, the only time we've really had stagflation in the last 50 years is in the 1970s. And stagflation, if you kind of define the term, there's stag and there's flation. Well, stag stands for stagnant, which means a stagnant economy. So if you have a stagnant economy, okay, and you have price increases, that's, in my economics background, it's called a double whammy. Now, I'm sure it's called something else in real circles, but you've got stagnant economy and increasing prices, that's stagflation. That's the fear. So what we have right now, the last couple of years, to your point, there's still lots of jobs out there. There's still people working. The economy, it's not booming like it was, but the economy is fairly stable, and prices are going up. So that's inflation. The fear is we hit stagflation, and that's just bad news.
Yeah, that's that recession that they're talking about that's coming in 2023. So definitely out there, the buzzword of recession is coming. That comes with the inflation as well. So that's great for inflation. I kind of want to talk, we're talking about inflation, but we want to talk about real inflation today, right? Because this inflation number that they're saying 7%, I can tell you right now that my inflation costs are a lot more than 7% at this point, right? So I think today we need to dig into real inflation and how we get there. And I think the first place we should probably start is how the fake inflation, as you called it, is measured. How do we measure fake inflation at the end of the day?
Yeah. So if we talk about CPI or Consumer Price Index, I mean, so what the governments in North America do is they say, okay, there used to be a fixed basket of goods, right? So you're going to buy, you're going to buy energy, you're going to buy food, you're going to buy, rent, you're going to do all these groceries, all these different things. And then they break them down in all these different categories and they say, okay, well, how much did they go up? So what they used to do is have what they call cost of living increase. And a cost of living increase was that basket of goods stayed fixed. So if you had a basket of goods, they'd compare it to next month or next year and say, okay, that exact same basket of goods is now up this much. And that was the cost of living increase or cost of living index. But I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years, governments came in and go, we get all these government benefits that are affected by these cost of living increases. Seems like a lot. Is there anything we can do to make this lower so we pay less and to make it look better, like we're running a better economy and the inflation isn't so high? So they changed it to CPI, and the Consumer Price Index measured a basket of goods, but assumes substitutions. So in other words, if some good goes up too much or it goes up a lot in price, they're going to substitute that out for a lower good. So they're assuming you're making substitutions when you look at CPI. So, real inflation or cost of living increase, probably about 50% higher than what's reported for inflation. And then we're going to dig into now real inflation. What's your inflation, Christina?
Yeah, exactly. I know the changes can't possibly be right because just because they're going up, am I going to switch and not buy my beef instead of my chicken, or am I going to buy generic because there's lots of things that we can't change. There's certain laundry detergents that you have to buy. You can't buy the generic because they're scented and those types of things. So it's not realistic that we are changing our spending habits because they're changing how that basket looks, which is giving us that false inflation rate. It's not telling us what's really happening in a household, which is exactly what we want to dig in today with that real inflation and what that rate is for individuals. And everybody's is different, right? We're not going to have my real inflation rate might be different than your real inflation rate. But I think at the end of the day, it's important for individuals and businesses to figure out what theirs is and then fight that. That's what we have to do as a first step. So I think starting with talking about real inflation and how we kind of measure that is a good place to start.
Yeah, so I think great points there, Christian. I think it's a mistake for people to just look at the CPI number and go, oh, inflation's up 8%. I got a 4 or 5% raise. I guess I'm losing a little, but I'm okay. No, you need to know what your inflation rate is. And I mean, when they give this CPI or cost of living increase, they actually break down each category and they say how much each category makes up. So there's all kinds of ways you can kind of figure out yours, but cash flow plans is a big one. Like you can build an Excel spreadsheet or go online. There's all kinds of them, and you can build in what you spend on a monthly budget for all these things, and then you can plug in the inflation rate for that. So if like take real estate for example, what's your payment now versus then? What's your house insurance now versus then? What's your property tax versus then? So there's all kinds of ways you can actually figure out your own inflation or the real inflation, because don't be misled by the top end numbers, because everyone's different. Depends what you're buying, depends what you're using, depends if you're substituting stuff.
Exactly. And I think we should dig into like some real examples on some of those things included in that basket. So let's talk about food, because it drives me crazy going to the grocery stores now. For something that I would have spent $100 on last year, I'm now spending $200 on. in my mind, that's not a 6% increase, guys. Like that is not, the prices at the store it's crazy what they're going up by.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you get some examples, Christina. Like, wait, I'm the same way. Like, I went to the grocery store a couple weeks ago, and it was like, how can it be like I thought I could tap, but I was over my tap limit, and I'm like, I only have one bag. Like, why is it so much? So do you have some actual numbers on what inflation, or sort of real inflation, is in your world?
Yeah, so I pulled a couple up here, and this only went to August, so it's actually probably worse at this point. But when we look at like condiments, spices, those types of things, they're up 17.2%. That's not 6%, right? If we look at bakery products, they're up 15.4%. We've got coffee, that's a big one. It's up by 13%. Another real life example is I used to go in for a coffee and spend $1.50. Now I'm spending $2 when I go in on that same coffee. That's a 33% rate increase. That is not 6%, that's 33. So this is what needs to be incorporated, right? With these real life examples and what's actually happening out there. Food's a big one.
Yeah.
And that makes up a big part of a household spending plan. Like I was running some other numbers, and I saw, for $800, which is a likely household budget for groceries, in the run of a month, that has probably gone up to about $1,000 for most people. And that is an increase of 25%. Is what 25%. That's not 6 for the regular individual.
So these people that say inflation 7 or 8%, I'd like them to go to the grocery store and buy stuff. Then I want them to buy a used car. Then I want them to fill it up with gas. Okay. Then I want them to get the insurance on it, and then I want to ask them if inflation's really 7%.
Well, yeah, and talk to our real estate investors, right? We haven't even touched the concept of mortgage, which we're going to get into here in a minute, but their landlord insurance is up. I think I've heard 20% increases across the board.
Or a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, and if you were, cash flowing, but not a lot at this point in time, when you add those increases, you add a variable mortgage interest rate going up, you're in the negative now, right? You're not cash flow positive. So that's why you're seeing a lot of landlords out there, real estate investors, the cash flow properties, they're hard to find. They're hard to find because you really, to get that bit of cash flow is not easy anymore.
Yeah. I mean, the American listeners, or the American residents that have those 30-year mortgages in the U.S., like, wow. So, there's people that locked into their mortgages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago at these incredibly low rates that are locked in for 30 years. I mean, that's amazing. We don't have that in Canada. In your best case scenario, 5 years. So, for those of you with fixed terms, hopefully by the time your term comes down, we can hopefully see some kind of decrease in interest rates, and we'll talk about the likelihood of that happening in a minute. But it's significantly impacting a lot of industries, and real estate is one that we're both in, and our clients are, and it's, if it was tough to find a cash flowing property a year or two ago, well, it's incredibly tougher now because those mortgage payments are up big time.
Yeah, so I have an example of a mortgage payment, which, everybody, individuals and real estate investors are going to have. If you've got a variable interest rate, let's say, a year ago you were sitting around 2.5%, a $500,000 mortgage at 2.5% is going to be around $2,200 a month for your mortgage payment. If that goes up to 6%, which is exactly what we've seen happen between now and last year, we're looking at a $3,200 mortgage payment. So you do the math, that is not a 6% increase. That's a 45% increase on their mortgage payments alone, right? And that is part of that CPI, right? It's in that basket of goods, but they're not measuring that real. And I know not everybody's invariable, but when you look at a lot of households out there, they are, and that's what they're working with, right? And you're seeing that disposable income come down because it's going towards that mortgage payment. Thanks for listening so far. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you always know when new content is coming out. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please leave a 5-star rating and leave a review and subscribe. And if you are interested in learning more, please visit our website at controlandcompound.com to sign up for a free education session with one of our wealth coaches.
So before we jump in, do we think it's going to change? Anything else sort of on inflation? Did I miss anything here, Christina? Before we dig into what's going to happen in the next couple of years? Are we going to be able to fix this?
I wanted to quickly touch on lifestyle inflation as well.
Thank you.
Yes, so that is important too. Darren, I'll ask you, what is lifestyle inflation?
Well, I have a real world experience, so lifestyle inflation or lifestyle creep is you start making more money, so you start spending more money, right? You were a kid, you started out, making $15 an hour, you think it's great, and then I get all kinds of money, and all of a sudden you get a job making $50 grand a year, and let's go buy that car, and then I'm making $70 grand, let's go buy that house, and now so every time you get a raise, you want to buy something. When I graduated from university, I used to play golf, and I played star flights because I had no money. They were about 25 cents a ball. Well, I don't play star flights anymore. I play Pro Vs, whatever. But the $3 ball. And it doesn't matter what star flights went up in price in my world, because my lifestyle inflation, I gravitated towards something else. And then, Christine, I don't know if I told you this one, but when my wife and I first got married years ago, we were poor and struggling like a lot of young couples and that. And, we used to burn wood in our wood stove from my dad's land and drink his homemade wine because it was like $1 a bottle or something, because we were trying to save money. And we had these old cars. And then, we got married. My wife got pregnant, and it was like, okay, I was going to give her my slightly less old car. And we're driving up the cul-de-sac one day, she's pregnant. And I was like, yeah, she has an old car we need to get rid of, but my car will be good enough for her because she doesn't travel like me. And then the wheel fell off. So there I am with my pregnant wife with the wheel rolling down the street. And I'm like, well, this isn't good. And when I went into the dealer, I was like, well, that couldn't happen on the highway, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, all right, so what did I do? Well, I bought two new cars. I was like, and I sold my wife's car for $300. Now, again, first time in my life I ever did body work. I did it in the backyard on that old car. But my point of that is what went up, what those two things went up, my old cars, is irrelevant because great, now my wife drives a nice Jeep. Okay, so that lifestyle creep or lifestyle inflation is huge, and that's Christina, you work some cash flow stuff. What can people do to try to avoid that lifestyle creep? Now, I'm not saying you can't make more money, get nicer things, but just keep in mind when you do that, that's really once you have a want and then you get that want, well, now it becomes a necessity, right? It's like, well, no, people like, well, now that I live in this community, I don't want to live in a community with lower priced homes, or I don't want to drive a lesser car than this. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I need an Audi, or I need a whatever, right? And kind of goes back to that Millionaire Next Door book. The millionaires aren't the people you think they are, because the people that tend to make more and more money, a lot of them, well, they get nicer stuff, nicer cars, nicer boats, nicer stuff, and then all of a sudden it's retirement time, and it's like, oh, sorry, you didn't save any money. So that's the challenge. You get the price, you start making more money, great, you can spend some, but you've got to have systematic places that to save some of that.
Exactly. So lifestyle inflation or creep happens to the best of us. And I do think that, there is a place for it. Obviously, you've worked hard for your money. You want to spend a little bit more. But one thing that you can do to make sure that this doesn't happen to you, you don't end up in retirement with nothing saved, is taking control of your finances. We talk about control all the time. One of the ways that I think people should take, one of the things people should be doing is creating a cash flow plan to really know where your expenses are going. So you break it down by fixed expenses. Those are things like mortgages, home insurances, things that can't be changed. And then you have your variable expenses, which do go up and down and can change with inflation, right? So you've got those. What you have to do is you have to turn your savings into fixed expenses or systematic savings, right? So if you decide you're going to put $250 away a month and you set that up as an automatic payment, well, now it's gone. It's set up just like a bill. So that is going to keep you on track with your saving. When you have an increase in salary or an increase in your wealth, you're going to want to relook that over, increase those systematic savings. So you can almost pretend like it didn't happen. You can give yourself a little bit, but you want to make sure that you direct it to another place. So you want to be putting that into a savings place for you later on. That's how you really protect yourself from that creep, is staying on top of it. So many people will, they leave their finances in the background and they don't truly know what's going on. And I think the first step is taking control and doing that plan and really breaking down your expenses and the savings that you're putting into place.
Yeah, and I mean, again, everyone's guilty of the lifestyle creep. We're not beating up anybody here, but just been in this business long enough, like just to see the people that when they start making more money, like say, hey, I'm getting a raise, I got a promotion, I got whatever, and then they're like, okay, can we discuss what I'm going to do with that money? And even for me, like years ago, it'd be like, what? You got more money? Like, but it's like, well, no. And then like, people that are disciplined are say, I'm going to make an extra 10 grand a year. Let's put that in a systemized savings vehicle, like infinite banking or like something else. Or let's take, 70% of that or 60% of that or 50% of that. And that's, again, some of those things, it's been a good run for a lot of people for the last number of years. But now with the way the economy is, people are going to have to, maybe act differently. And for those younger people, if you can get a hold of that bracket creep now, again, not saying don't spend more money, but let's save some of it. Then you're not going to have that problem where a lot of people are today that had bracket creep their whole lives and they're 50, 60, 70 years old and they just have not saved near enough money to maintain their lifestyle.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's just have a quick conversation. Do we think inflation's going to go away, and what's going to happen with it? And I'm not trying to be political here, but I mean, there's a couple big things going on that I don't know if we have the political will right now in North America to make the tough decisions that the government need to make to reduce spending, to stop spending, to combat inflation. I mean, going back in Canada and the U.S., I mean, in the 70s and the 80s, there were really some tough decisions governments made. I mean, Paul Martin came in and really cut things. I mean, and because things were bad and that had to be done, and it wasn't popular, but it was the right thing to do. And I don't know if there's the political will in North America right now for governments to say, oh, well, we need to stop spending money on this or that. So that concerns me. And then the other thing is, about a third of inflation probably can go back to energy costs. And right now, the world survives on fossil fuels, right? So when that ship comes from China, when that's manufactured in China, when the ship comes over and it gets on the railway and it gets in a truck and it gets delivered to the grocery store, or that farmer uses fossil fuel equipment and he delivers it on a truck and distribution center, all that is fossil fuel related. And we've had a massive sort of attack on fossil fuels in the last couple of years, and we can talk about that another time, whether that's good or bad. And I'm not saying we can't move green, but because of that, fossil fuel prices are going to go up because we're restricting supply right now, right? They're not getting as much supply. So, when we have green technology to replace that, great. But right now we don't have a low cost energy alternative to replace all those. So if we're not going to fix that, and we're not going to fix, the will to make these changes, I'm not saying we can't get through this, but I think it's going to be a little tougher, maybe a little longer to get through it in the past when politicians and governments made tougher decisions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I don't think this is going to change tomorrow. I think that people and businesses need to start looking at inflation as it is and what's happening, and start making and implementing changes that they can do now to fight against inflation, right? They've got to put plans in place to be able to do that. I don't think it's going away in the next 6 months and 12 months. I'm not 100% sure, right? I can't predict the future. But at this point, I'm definitely preparing. I'm not assuming it's going to be gone by January, right? This is going to stick around for a bit. We've already, this inflation buzzword has been around for a while already. This year, we've heard a lot about inflation, and it's still continuing. We're not seeing it. We're not seeing that change. So getting prepared, getting ready, making some decisions and changes to fight that inflation, I think that's what's next. And I think that's what we should talk about next as well, so that we can, how can people fight inflation? How can they, stay above it?
There's a couple things you can do to fight inflation within your individual situation or your business situation. And you're really going to see a lot of individuals, and you've already seen this, across the board, but businesses too, they need to get even more efficient, right? They need to look for efficiencies because, again, things have been good the last number of years. Everyone making money, or a lot of people making money, a lot of businesses making money. Well, now as costs are increasing and maybe revenue's not going to increase as near as much, they got to be really more efficient. So, look at all those expenses. Same as, individuals that, never really had a budget, never really had a cash plan because things, there's money there. Well, now times are different. So now you need to make some of those tougher decisions and really just, track those expenses and see where we go. And then the other one is technology, because technology really can be just an efficiency multiplier. And we just got to look at COVID for that. So what happened with COVID? And I mean, we were already virtual before COVID, but businesses started doing Zoom meetings. Now, is it less expensive to do a Zoom meeting, halfway around the world, or jump in a plane, fly there, get a hotel, rent a car, all that stuff? Obviously, that type of technology is helping. We've got all the stuff in the clouds and all your files in the cloud and stuff. Like, companies are becoming more efficient with technology, but I think there's going to be really a big push in the next couple of years to how do companies and how do individuals use technology to really improve their efficiencies, so you can grow your business at the same time, maybe not increase your expenses, or grow your business faster than you're growing your expenses. And then the last thing I'd say is, don't lose sight of the amazing opportunities that are going to come our way. I believe in the next 0 to 5 years will be the greatest buying opportunity in my working life. This is going to be, I think, an amazing buying opportunity. So don't lose sight of that. All kinds of incredible businesses got started the last time in 2008-9 when we had stuff like this going on. There's always ways to make money. So you need to make sure you don't give up looking for opportunities. And then the other one is, well, how do you take advantage of opportunities? You have control of your money. And you need control of your money. So, that's cash value life insurance and infinite banking. That's cash. That's lines of credit. Lines of credit, getting those lines of credit set up now, when you're making good money or the business is making good money, getting those lines of credit set up. Now, again, lines of credit's not as good as cash, and neither one is as good as cash value life insurance and an infinite banking policy. But a line of credit, if you get that approved now, then when that opportunity comes along, you can use those three things to take advantage of that opportunity, because amazing opportunities will be here. And like, even in real estate, there's going to be a point where smart real estate people are already talking about it, going, well, if I buy this house now at this mortgage rate, maybe it's not, as sexy as I want it to be. But if I'm confident that when that mortgage in 1, 2, 3 years or whatever renews, you saw how much a change in interest rates can affect that. Now, again, that's a little aggressive, but I mean, people are going to be looking at stuff like that and saying, how can I take advantage of this situation? Because every time there's a recession, there's amazing opportunity. And I think what happens is the layperson loses sight of that. The layperson is, oh my God, this is the end of the world. I don't know if it's ever going to get out of this. And the people with money, the people that make money, the people that are smart with their money, they look at this and go, wow, everyone else is scared. There's blood on the streets. This is an amazing buying opportunity. So, I don't know if that's going to be now. I don't know if it's going to be next year, the next 5 years. But anytime that buying opportunity is going to come along, and whether it's 20 years, again, you can have opportunities without coming out of a recession. It's so important to have access and control of your money, liquidity use and control of your money. So make those decisions now, so when the opportunities come along, you'll be ready to go.
100%. I do want to touch on your cash though, because right now, money sitting in a bank account, when you look at inflation at 7%, that means your bank account is losing 7% just sitting there. So we say cash, but I don't thoroughly agree that cash is a good place. I just wanted to mention that because, with inflation, a bank account is a terrible place to just have your money. Yeah. So
cash or cash equivalents was my
cash value. I'm all about the cash value.
Cash value, yes. But then cash equivalent, like a high interest savings account, again, a good portion of your money should be in cash value life insurance, not every single nickel, right? No. So you're good point, Christina. You don't want you sitting in cash. When I say cash, if you can get a 4% or 5%, return. Now, again, but that's a good point, because What you don't want to be is you don't want to put it in a 5-year GIC or a 3-year GIC saying, oh, I got an extra quarter point interest than if I put it in something that's cashable. Well, it's just not worth it if you're going to lose out on millions of dollars because you can't take advantage of that opportunity, or you're going to pay big penalties to get it out. So cash value, number one, cash equivalents, put it in, get some interest, and lines of credit. Those are 3 areas. I mean, there's all kinds of more, but we can dig into those another day. But those are the things that I'm doing and a lot of our clients are doing. And then it's the mindset of, wow, this is going to be the greatest sale of my lifetime. And Christina, you like a good sale.
I love a good sale. Getting ready for it. Getting ready for that sale. So this is where millionaires are made. So when these types of things happen, this is where the people with cash on hand, or what you have on hand, having the access to that money is going to be able to take on those opportunities. I always say, like, why did the deal of a lifetime happen? Well, it's because somebody needed to sell, they needed money, and somebody had money. That's when you get your deals. So making sure that you have that cash on hand to be able to do it makes perfect sense to me. This is what we talk about on a regular basis, having control of your money, and it's for times like these. This is where we're headed. We're seeing it happening, and a lot of people are talking about it, right? They already know that they're going to be looking for these real estate deals and things coming up. So it's keeping your eyes opened and making sure that you have access to your money.
Yeah, and so that opportunity, like I just want to hammer it home one more with a quick story. Like, I lived through 2008, and I had a bunch of clients, at the time, and most of them were business owners. And the car dealers were just desperately losing money left and right. Things weren't good. Well, I had a car dealer client, had his best year by far when everyone else had his worst year. Why? Because he found an opportunity. He was down in the States at his condo in the South, and he saw this. The guy delivered a satellite dish, and the guy had a cool truck, and he's a car guy, started talking. And the guy goes, yeah, I get a new one every year. Well, this guy ended up going buy these, worker trucks kind of thing. He ended up buying like 30 or 40 of those, converting them to Canadian dashboard or whatever. And they made incredible money on that. Why? Because he was looking for opportunities. He was saying business isn't good, the traditional way we've been doing it. What other opportunities are out there to do that? Now, to do that, he had to have control, liquidity use and control of his money, but he also had to have the mindset of, maybe things aren't as good as they were a couple years ago, but what opportunities can I take advantage of when everyone else is too scared?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great story. If he would have had the money in a GIC, it wouldn't have worked out so well because he wouldn't have been able to take it, right? So, yeah.
Or if he had his money in the stock market and it was down 40%, he probably wouldn't have accessed it, right?
Yep.
That's what's happening right now. People, their stock market's down, so they're not going to really have access to that money unless they want to take a big loss to do it.
I might have made that error once. I might have done that. So I completely agree with that can happen, right? As soon as those markets go down, you only lose when you take out. But if you need it, you got to take out, and you're going to take that loss, right? Yeah. So.
Okay, I think we kind of summarized kind of what we wanted to chat about today. So that's what you can do to really, take advantage of opportunities, or prepare yourself to take advantage of opportunities. Don't fall in love with this CPI and think, it's only 8%. Try to figure out your real inflation, and, just mindset. Don't believe what you hear. There's going to be amazing opportunities. Don't believe what you hear. Go to the grocery store and then say inflation's only 7%. Fill your gas tank up and say it's 7%. It's not. So my inflation's a lot more than 7. Some people talk about 20%. Figure out your own, but get the mindset and get that money in a liquidity use and control spot like cash value life insurance, cash equivalents, and get those lines of credit. All right, anything else, Christina?
I think that's a wrap on inflation, Darren.
All right.
For now.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. And if you want more information, check out our website, controlandcompound.com, and you can sign up for an education session with one of our wealth coaches.